Welcome to Odyssey's Influencer Insights, your go-to place for anything influencers. Let's jump right in. Hey everyone, welcome back to Odyssey's Influencer Insights. Today, I'm super excited to introduce Lianna, a storyteller, culture ambassador, and creative coach. With over 11 years of experience, Lianna started her career in MMA and jiu-jitsu communities before expanding into travel, branding, and coaching. She's worked with brands like MVMT, Dream Yacht, Global, and Keem, helping creators turn their passions into profitable careers. Today, we'll explore her journey, how she built authentic connections, and her insights on travel, partnerships, and brand authenticity. Lianna, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ezra. Happy to be here.
Yeah, super excited. So, to start off, I'd love to hear more about kind of your upbringing and what got you into all the different things you're doing today. I saw, as mentioned there, that you started over 11 years ago doing MMA, jiu-jitsu, and yeah, just I'll let you take it from here and hear about what you're doing.
Oh yeah, sure. So actually, I worked as a athletic therapist and strength and conditioning coach
Mm.
for a while. I worked with predominantly MMA fighters and jiu-jitsu athletes, and dabbled in a little bit of that myself. I still do a little bit, like a
Sure.
hobby competitor from time to time. Um, but yeah, that was great, and it really just kind of gave me like an amazing foundation for what it looks like to run a business. To be able to like have the freedom of having my own schedule and doing what I want and all that, and knowing that that's what I wanted to be into. And then kind of cue the pandemic, which I know is a big thing for a lot of us. I was always into photography, working with people creatively to help them grow their businesses as well, because I'd been in business for myself for a long time. And so being able to kind of like have the opportunity, I'll say, of the space of my business kind of dying because of COVID. I was able to basically build up from the ground what I have now and take all of those side passions and hobbies and create them into the business that I have and am running today. I don't know if that fully answers your question, but kind of gives you a little bit of something there.
Yeah, that does. That's extremely cool. I'm not super familiar with the whole MMA thing, but I know that I have a lot of friends that are super excited, and if they tune into this episode, will be beyond themselves hearing someone that does that and was in the business. So that's so cool. And so yeah, from those early years to COVID to now, what you're doing today, I saw that you're doing a lot of different, very cool stuff. Can you talk about kind of what you're doing today now from that early kind of
Yeah.
business start there?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. I feel like I'm sure you understand this too, that as like creatively, a lot of us got into the creative space because we're not really good being in a box.
Hmm.
And so it's funny because then we're kind of told like, find your niche and there's value in that. But I like to think of it as more of like, here's my like foundational trunk and then all my tree branches that go out from there. So I have all of my like different things, but they all like base to the foundation of like what's really important and what I get to do. So creatively, I do photo and video work for brands, for clients, depending on what the project is. Some of my own projects as well. I'm really big into storytelling and really big into being able to connect and share who people are and allow humanity to kind of know somebody for a little bit more than what we would see when we look at them. Um, I also have a podcast as well. It's for 3 years running. I interview people internationally and at home, but just the focus is to just share who they are, allow people to get to meet somebody and hopefully be impacted by somebody that maybe they wouldn't have met before, maybe they wouldn't have seen in the same light until they sit down and hear a little bit more of their story. Um, I also do a lot of coaching and mentoring for other creators, and that looks like taking the years and years and years that I have been in business and helping them formulate what they want to do if they're starting out, how to figure out what the foundation of that business looks like, from handling all of the boring back end stuff that a lot of us are don't know what to do with when it comes to, maybe our email marketing or our branding or our taxes even. And I help them formulate all that. And I also work with those who've been in this space for a long time and are established and looking to kind of have a little bit more balance and just enjoy a little bit more of their free time in their life, or maybe price them their contracts out in a way that values their work a little bit more. So I love the opportunity I get to work with just a wide range of people in that, but all within the creative space. And then I also host a couple trips a year as well. So I do some for creators and some for just people who want to travel.
Well, that's a lot of moving
Yeah.
parts. I guess, like you say, with the trike, they all connect somehow. But wow, that's a lot. One thing just right off the bat is how do you manage? Like, do you have sort of strategies to manage? Because even as someone in the creative field, that just seems almost overwhelming. If you're able to do all that, that's amazing. But what
Yeah.
would you say to someone kind of struggling to manage, a bunch of different things like that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think ultimately, like, for me, it comes down to these are all aspects of like things that I really enjoy. I love being able to connect with people. I love being able to allow others to kind of experience culture. And so, like the podcast or the trips that I host, they both kind of draw into that same point. So for me, it's even just like if I'm on a trip or I'm hosting people or traveling somewhere or working on a brand trip for something, there's usually opportunity for me to sit down for an hour with somebody that I've met on that time and say, "Hey, would you be willing to let me share your story?" So there's space where these things just kind of cohesively have organically come together. I'm also a very highly organized individual,
That's
so
good.
yeah, that is a factor as well. But I think ultimately it's prioritizing our time in our day of like, what do I want to do with this day that I have?
Yeah.
And at the end of it, or at the end of like a week or a month or the year of saying like, what's really not serving me or what's not getting me closer to those bigger goals that I have. And just kind of maybe removing those things from time and replacing them with things that you feel more value in at the end of the day. I always joke that I'm like really bad at watching TV because there's just other things that I find a little bit more value in, but it's important to have those downtimes too.
You mentioned a lot about kind of those human connections, cultivating that human connections. How exactly did you get into kind of focusing on that mission? Because that seems like that's a big part of what you do, right?
Yeah, yeah, for me it's really important. I think I don't know, I didn't really like grow up having opportunity to connect with a lot of people. And I think we can have this idea that the world is this big scary place. And then when we actually sit down with somebody and hear who they are, it allows us to see that, one, maybe it's not that big and scary, but two, maybe we can connect and understand who somebody is a little bit better. And I think that also impacts the way we view our own abilities, our own opportunities, and even just who we are as well. So I'd say just like overall, it probably stems from just really enjoying talking to people and then just watching where that can go. And just seeing the value and the impact that that has had, not just on me as a person, but then the feedback I get from people who've traveled with me and met people that I get to connect them with in a foreign country, or people who've listened to the podcast and felt that, hearing someone's story allowed them to maybe feel permission to go to therapy or start something new or, pursue a dream. And I think that it just feels very fulfilling to me. So I think overall that's probably where that lands.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I'm curious to maybe go back a little bit. Just so you're doing the MMA stuff, and then in COVID you're doing more of the photo, and then now you're doing a lot of content creation, influencer work, as well as helping and coaching other people, which I want to hear a little bit more about in a bit.
Sure.
But before that, how did you get from kind of starting a little more into that photography to full out content creator with amazing content and a large following? What was that journey like?
So I would say that that journey was just deciding to start sharing things. And I'm sure we hear that a lot where it's like, just be consistent. And I think if I could give like some unsolicited random advice to anybody listening that's in the creative space, like it really is about consistency and saying like, this is what I'm passionate about. This is who I am. And this is the message and value that I know that I have. And this is the work that I'm doing. And I want to share that with the world. And
Hmm.
then consistently sharing it and not getting in your own head or getting in your own way. So a lot of that transition was maybe through that time in COVID where I just started sharing more, whether it be my writing, whether it be reaching out to people, whether it be putting on my stories like, hey, if anyone is feeling lonely and needs to talk, and just getting responses from that. And just kind of saying like, what, this is space that I want to create. This is something that I feel is valuable, and just getting a response because other people connected with that and felt the same thing. Um, and then it just kind of grew, and you were like, oh, okay, this is cool. So I think it just kind of organically happened in that capacity. Yeah, I don't have a major following, but it's something that's allowed me to continue doing what I'm doing and just be able to be super passionate about it and see that there are people like me that value that appreciate that as well. So I don't know if that answers that.
No, it definitely does. And Yeah, that's a great story of the journey there, and I'm curious. So, you also help other creators, people in that field that want to get a little more into that, um, to succeed in that field. Would you say that there's some main hurdles that people face that either turn them away from content creation, or they're starting to do content creation and it's just something that is kind of getting in the way, and they don't know if it's for them necessarily?
Oh man, yeah, that's a great question. I feel like overall, I think the biggest like consistent roadblock I hear from people that I'm working with is uh they don't know what to say. They don't feel like content's good enough, or they don't feel like they're sure of what their message is, or, how they want to do it, or if the market's oversaturated, or we hear all these things. And I think ultimately, like what I would tell them, and what I do tell them, and what I would tell anybody listening that's trying to get into it or just feeling frustrated in it, is ask yourself like who you are, what your unique story is, what's unique to you and what you have to offer, because no one else has to offer what you do. And if you show up with that, whatever that is, there will be people that connect with that, because you are not an oversaturated market. You are you, and there's only one of you. And so, however you choose to create content or market what you're doing, it's going to be from a perspective that no one else has and an experience that no one else has. And so, I'd say, as scary as that is, like press into that, and don't be afraid to be who you are, and don't be afraid to let other people see that within reason. Um, but yeah, I think that's probably what I would say I see most people struggle with, is like, well, what is my brand, and who am I, and what do I really do, and how do I narrow that down? And that might sound funny coming from somebody who's doing like what it feels like 15 million different things. But again, I would say like look at that base and say like at the foundation, what is most important to me? What do I find most fulfilling? And if like my work was based on this, it would really fulfill me. I find purpose in it and it brings me joy. And then say, okay, how can I branch off of that and utilize all of my talents, all of my abilities, and what I want to learn and grow in from here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that advice because I feel like it can be a little bit overwhelming at times when you're looking. You might come up with different content ideas, or you're scrolling through different social medias, and it seems like everything's been done, and you're kind of not sure how you fit in. So I
Yep.
guess, like we were saying, it's all about finding your specific identity and how you can be unique there,
Yeah,
right?
100% for sure. Yeah, there's always that like, oh, it's been done before. Should I be doing this because somebody else is doing it? And it's like, now you can be really successful on socials if you just duplicate what's happening out there, but it probably will not bring you the joy and the fulfillment that you're looking for, and it will be way more successful if you do what's unique to you and don't worry
Mm-hmm.
about all the trends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's amazing. And can I ask if, let's say, someone is a little bit later in their stage, let's say they're doing some social media now, they're seeing some results, and they want to kind of make this maybe into a more full-time thing and just have more flexibility there, um, but they're not really sure how to get brand deals or how to start making money. What would you say for advice of kind of taking that next step if you are seeing some results?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's the scariest part for any of us, is
Mm-hmm.
we're like, okay, like I feel like I'm good at producing content, or I know how to use my camera, or I know how to, post and portray this and collect an audience or whatever it is. But like, how do I get somebody to pay me for this? And that's like the age-old
Mm-hmm.
question that everybody's
Yeah.
asking. They're like, well, where's the money coming from? And I think like one of the biggest, I've actually used this in like with other people before. I was saying like, and the reference falls a little short when I'm speaking to a guy as opposed to speaking to a group of women. But I said, like, I want you to feel like when you are approaching a brand that you want to work with, when you are reaching out, when you're saying like these are people I want to work with, I want you to pursue that with the enthusiasm I say of like a guy in a bar at the end of the night that's like, someone say hi to me or something, where it's like I'm refusing to like not be afraid of rejection, like, and that's a terrible analogy, but like the joke kind of lies in there of saying that like we are so often afraid of someone turning us down. We're afraid of, not presenting it perfectly. um, and I think what we need to do is start. So I would say if you're trying to figure out how to get paid, I would say make a list of companies or brands or hotels or, foundations or something that you say, I really want to work with this group of whatever it is. Make a whole list, make an Excel sheet, make a written list in a notebook, whatever it is. There's no right or wrong way to do it. Just start doing it. Make a list of what that is. Find contacts, whether it's on their website, whether you scour LinkedIn, whether you go on socials, and then add those all together. You've got your list, you've got your contacts, and then write up a pitch and just say, hey, my name is so and so. This is what I do. I'd love to talk to you more. Whatever that pitch looks like, tailor it to you, tailor it to your content. Speak to that brand. Like, take some time, go
Hmm.
onto their website and be like, oh man, I'm really good at web design and they're really short in this area. What is a problem they have that you can solve? And how can you solve it from your unique experience and perspective? And then start sending those emails, start sending those messages, send a DM, send whatever, and don't be afraid of the rejection. Just start doing it. You will get a response. You will get a response that says no. You will get no response. You will get a response that says, hey, yeah, we'll offer you a product and not pay you. And you're going to get a response from somebody that says, what are your rates?
Hmm.
Somewhere in there, you're going to get the right response. Don't sell yourself short. Um, don't belittle your content. Don't belittle your talent or ability. I would say, like, don't get into something where when you're doing it, you're going to feel frustrated and wish you didn't say yes to it because you're like, they're not paying me enough. This isn't
Hmm.
worth it. Like, if you
Yeah.
can look at the amount they're going to pay you and think about the project and it doesn't excite you, turn it down. Just turn it
Hmm.
down.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what I would say is there's a better way to write a pitch. There's a better way to approach this. There's a better way to do these things. There's a better way to follow up. There's always a better way to do it, but the best way is to start doing it and to start figuring out what works for you to get into that motion. And of course, there's always people you can reach out to, I'm sure, to both of us, to anybody else who's been in this space that can say, like, hey, can you give me any advice? What do you recommend? Like, there's so much within the creative community that I really believe is here, and values supporting each other. Um, and so I would say, like, yeah, start, begin, and it's a lot easier for people to want to come alongside you and support you when you're already putting that work and improving that you're willing to take the risk and put the effort in.
Yeah, that's incredible advice. And a question I have there is when you're starting, so you're starting to get those emails hopefully back. Like you're saying, there's going to be a wide variety. Some won't respond, some will say, yeah, let's do that. Some just for um, maybe gear collaborations. Um, the first question there is, yeah, I guess you kind of touched on it in the sense that if you're not super excited about it, don't go. Because a question I had is, when you're first starting out, I guess you just want to work with brands, especially brands that excite you. But at the same time, I guess you got to be a little cognizant that if you accept every brand, especially brands that aren't pay, maybe it's not going to seem as authentic in a sense. So how exactly do you, one, know your worth? I know you talk a lot about, knowing your worth. So how do you price your product, especially when you're just starting out and you really don't know, and there's such a wide variety, as well as knowing which to accept when you're starting out, when you're kind of not, you want the experience, but also you don't want to have yourself or run yourself too thin. So it's kind of finding that balance there.
Yeah, for sure. I can totally appreciate it. And I actually appreciate you bringing that kind of back up because you're right. It is like if you're just starting out and you don't have like a portfolio or, you're kind of like virtual resume and that to show somebody, say like, if I'm talking to a potential client and they're like, "Well, can you show me your work?" And you go, "Well, I don't have any." You kind of
Hmm.
need that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, for sure. There are going to be things in the beginning that you're going to need to take on to be able to do that. Make sure they're aligned with you. That's like such a thrown around word sometimes, but I would say that aligned with you means when you figure out that like core motivation, that like tree trunk that I was kind of referring to myself as, like what
Hmm.
what matters to me most, what do I value most, and like what is the thing that like I don't care what the dollar amount is, I would never do that. Like find
Yeah.
out what those core values are and say like, does this go against them? Okay, maybe sometimes there's going to be things often that don't go for or against that. And then you just have to decide like, okay, you know what? This is, there's a camera bag company and I might already have a camera bag, but I could use this and this would be great and this works for me and they're really only asking for like a small amount of deliverables and it's going to be something I can put on my in my portfolio. Like, yes, this is great. there's no right or wrong answer for these things. It's what makes sense for you, what works for you, what aligns with your, your values and your work, and what you feel like you're willing to put out, and if it's worth what you're getting in return. If you find yourself a year into being a creative and you are doing all trade work for a gear or a product, it's probably time for you. You've probably got a portfolio already. We probably need to
Hmm.
make like well before that. But I'd say if you have zero portfolio, look for creative ways to do that. And a lot of that can be like, hey, if I want to get into photographing clothing or a hotel or whatever it is that is, reach out to some friends. Go do a photo shoot for fun. Get something. You can build up your portfolio in ways that don't involve you doing work for free per se for a brand. You can get creative with what that looks like. You can do a spec ad for a client that you don't work for. You can partner up with another creative and do work together. If you're like, oh my goodness, like I'm really great at videography, but I'm terrible at editing and sound design. And this other guy, like maybe his video is not as great, but he's really good at these things. DM somebody, get together, find an excuse to do that, and work together on something. You're going to each learn from that, and you're going to come out with something that you can add to, your portfolio of work that is going to speak to your talents and your abilities and your ability to collaborate with somebody else as well. And now you have somebody that you can network with for maybe a project that's bigger if you get a bigger client on that you don't want to handle all on your own.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. And a thing about that, and I also saw somewhere on one of your socials or your website, you talked about the importance of, while working with brands, still staying true to your content style. So what
Mhm.
advice would you give people that if you're starting to land those brands, whatever creative path you decide there, but still kind of struggling to ensure that you're creating that brand content while still aligning to that type of content that you want to do, right? Because some brands, even if let's say you really like what they offer and that type of products they have, it might not exactly align to what your content is,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I think that's a super important question too. And I think like something that a lot of newer maybe creatives or even those that have been in the space for a long time can forget is that you can do work for a client that doesn't show up on your page. That's a
Hmm.
huge source of work.
Yeah.
So for sure you want to make sure that like you are your branding as a creative. So what you're putting out, you want it to match that style and that feel that people can see it and be like, "Oh, I recognize this as their work."
Hmm.
But, it's okay if you're like, hey, this is a great client. I love doing that work. It's probably not something that I would post that aligns with maybe my feed or what I feel like is important to me in this moment right now, but it is stuff that I would love to produce for that client. It aligns for them. So that's one way to kind of answer that question. Another
Hmm.
way is to say, hey, if they're asking for something and you're like, it's kind of there, but this is kind of what I want to give as my creative input. They're hiring you as a creative to share your input because they at some point saw your work and your style. Don't be afraid to speak up to that. Don't be afraid to give feedback. I just finalized work with a client where they sent something back to me. They're like, "How about this?" And I was like, "I love that input. Here's where I would change it." And we went back and forth and we settled on something that meets where they're at and meets where I'm at. And that is something that we got to not be afraid to do is to not go into a contract with this fear that like, oh my gosh, what if they say no?
Hmm.
That's okay. If they say no, it's okay. If you're really, really like in a situation where you're like they're offering you, $500 for this one thing and it's a very small contract and you're like, I just really need 500 bucks right now. If that's where you're at, like go take a part-time job at a coffee shop and don't
Yeah.
let your creative work suffer. And I know that might be the worst advice that I can give you when you're already running a business and already running to the ground. But anybody who tells you that there is balance in every aspect of your life and there's ease starting a business is lying to you. This is the second business that I've started and made successful, and you work your butt off. You work really, really, really hard. You put in hours that nobody else puts in, so that when you're down the road, so that now at this point in my life, I can be like, I worked 3 hours today and I feel like being done, so I am. And sure, there's days where I'm working more and there's days where I'm working less, but I can have that balance now because I busted my butt before and I put all that work in then. And so don't be afraid or feel like you're failing in a business because you're working a lot. It is a lot, and it is a lot of commitment to say, this is what I want, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make it happen. Um, but yeah, my advice would be don't sell yourself short on a contract because you're afraid they're going to say no, and give them something that you're going to regret, or concede on something that you're going to regret later on just for a couple bucks. Like if you're that desperate for the couple bucks, don't be afraid to work harder and sleep a little less for a short period of time, a sustainable short period of time, till you can get yourself on your feet and make that a little bit more. And again, there's other ways too to make a few extra bucks with your camera, with your gear. That doesn't mean go work at a coffee shop. But if you find yourself selling yourself short on a contract, my advice would be say no and walk away from it.
I love that. I feel like some people when they're just starting out, I guess they kind of just want to take any, like you're saying, any bucks they can get, any deal. But it's good to kind of just step back and evaluate the situation and try and make the best decision you can there. So I'd love to hear a little bit more as well about what you're doing on your end. I see for your content, for your business, you're constantly traveling. Seems like you're all over the place doing so much cool stuff. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, sure. It's funny because everybody's always like, "Are you even home?" And I'm like, "I am." So I actually have I'm married, so I've been with my partner for a long time, and I actually also have four kids that are all adopted as well.
Wow.
So they're I never was pregnant, but they have been with us for 7 years. So I have a family here. I have a whole life here, but I also have a business that I love, and my partner is very supportive of me continuing to be able to pursue that business and to grow that business. So my life is a very different balance than a lot of people in the creative space. So I do travel. I'm never usually gone more than 2 weeks at a time. So I'm gone. I go on a trip. I shoot everything for a client while I'm there, or whatever it is the project is, or whether it's a trip I'm hosting. And then I come home and I do all of my editing, and I'm back for usually at least the time that I was gone on that trip or double, before I would then go again. So I have a really nice balance that allows me to basically be present where I am, and come back and have that like base when I come home for a bit. And then I'm usually home a lot more than I'm traveling actually, but it looks like I'm gone a lot more because I usually then post more consistently once I'm
Hmm.
back. And I'm not trying to do too many things at once while I'm traveling and posting and doing all of that as well. So it just gives me a little bit more balance for that, um, which again is a very unique situation to me. But I guess in that I would just say that it can look like whatever it's supposed to look like for you, and there's no one mold, um,
Hmm.
where this is what works and this is what doesn't.
Yeah. And it seems like when you're traveling, kind of documenting stories is a big part of what you do. I saw the cowboys in Cappadocia and then the different cultures in Tahiti. What kind of draws you to the stories that you create and what yeah, makes you think that a story is worth capturing?
Oh man, I love that. Um, I feel like this this story, like I think that there's a lot of stories that we see and we're like, I want to go hear this or tell this or whatever. And I think for me, a lot of what impacts what I feel like is worth telling is the experience that I have with that situation. A lot of that comes down to making sure I'm fully present when I am there, that I can really experience that, talk to those people, have some kind of a connection with that individual and be like, wow, this is really cool. Like I'm able to share firsthand from like going back to that, like what's your unique perspective of how you're creating a story or how you're creating content. And so for me to be able to be fully present in those situations and experience that, um, it's really just inspiring to be able to say like, wow, this I'm just witnessing this individual and what they're doing with their life, and it almost just compels us to say I have to share this. And I think that the best stories are the ones that we're really sitting there listening to and really like absorbing and hearing, and they're impacting us, because when we're really impacted by something, it kind of does, it just compels us to reshare that of how we've experienced it. And it's the most authentic, and it impacts people the most as they're reading it or watching it, because they can
Hmm.
see our excitement. They can see how we really feel about it, and our joy comes out in that as we tell that story because it really mattered to us, as opposed to just like, yeah, okay, everyone photographs this thing and here it is. It's like, this is what I experienced when I was there, and this is the impact it had on me, and this is who that person is, and this is what they sound like, and this is, what makes them laugh. And it's just, for me, I think that's really what draws me into telling a story. Um, it's just being able to be given the opportunity to experience that individual or that space or that situation for myself.
And having immersed yourself in so many of these diverse cultures, how do you say that seeing these different people, the different stories, how did that kind of transform your worldview from before you were able to travel and see all those different things to where you are now?
Oh, immensely.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can't understand what we haven't experienced, and we can't speak to what we don't know.
Hmm.
And so much of even who we are is just based on our own world, and our own world is where we live and what's around us and who we talk to, and we understand what we've been told, or what we seek out, or what we learn. And so for me to be able to, grow as a person because I've been to places that now my world expands a little bit more.
Hmm.
So instead of just this is my world and this is what I know, it's now here and here and here. And I always say that, like, my heart's in a million pieces all around the world, and I'm okay that it will never be whole, because I love people and places that are all over, and they're never going to be in one place. But it's cool for me because it means that, my love and understanding for things that I never knew existed has expanded so much that I see, when I look at a person that I don't know, I wonder, who are they? Like, what's behind them? We don't look at somebody and say, wow, they look different. Where are they from? Why do they look different? We go, oh, that's a person, because maybe I see my friend in that image, or maybe I see, a culture that taught me, it's okay to be peaceful. Or maybe I learned something from a culture that, sits and spends more time at dinner, or one that if a stranger knocks on their door, they open it and welcome them in for tea. And so maybe I view humanity in a different way now, because I've been shown what it does in all corners of the world. And that, to me, is just,
Hmm.
I think, it's just a really beautiful opportunity that I don't take for granted, and I'm really grateful that I get to have.
Yeah. And I'm curious, was there a certain place or a certain person that really stuck out to you to date?
Whew. It's funny because I feel like people
No way
always
to
ask
put
me,
you on the
like,
spot, but I'm
no,
curious.
no, no, it's okay. It's funny because I think, as I'm gonna come back to you in like a year and be like, who is your favorite podcast? Because then you're gonna be like, oh man.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like a
it's
hard
a tough
question.
question. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's a hard question because I think people and places do impact us everywhere. But
Hmm.
yes, there are, I would say, oddly enough, I think Mexico and Jordan are two countries that have really changed me for the better. Jordan, I would say, because I was able to have the opportunity and the honor to do some close work with a lot of the refugees coming in years ago, and being able to go back again and again since then. Um, for those that have just been impacted by what's going on in the Middle East and what has been going on in the Middle East, and to just um, be able to sit with somebody and hear who they are,
Hmm.
and for them to just trust you with that information, but also to just welcome you into their space. I mentioned a door being open and someone sharing tea with you, and I've been in spaces in Jordan where there are people who have maybe way less than anyone could imagine, and they will stop what they're doing, sit with you, and you are what matters to them. And they will sit with you and share the cup of tea that they have. And I think there's just so much that we can learn no matter who we are, in the value of who's in front of us, and the value of taking that time, and that and those people. I have friends there that I stay in touch with, that I go back and see, and they mean a lot to me. So that country is just very near and dear to my heart, for sure. And then I would also say Mexico, because we can never have one answer in this question. I
Right.
would also say Mexico because it's where I really fell in love with freediving and the water. And I would say it's where I think I personally did a lot of just healing as a person. The peace that I found in diving in the cenotes there, the silence there, the idea that we should be terrified in a space and yet you're able to find peace in it is something that I'm really, really grateful for. And again, there's just people there that have welcomed me as family, and that feel like family to me, and it really does feel like home. So I would say those two, they really stand out to me a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks for sharing. And I
Yeah.
saw that, as you were mentioning there with Mexico, that the sea and diving are both big parts of your life. Was it that experience in Mexico that made you fall in love with the sea and diving, or was there previous experiences and then being in Mexico kind of heightened that?
I have always loved the water. Like I've been told like even since a little kid that like I was trying to just like eat the sand and live in the ocean. So
Hmm.
I think that I always joke that like I just kind of belong there. I swam all through school.
Very
And
cool.
I always loved that. And then I think I just saw something online and I was like, wait, freediving's like a thing you could train. And I instantly was like, went on Instagram, found a course, signed up, flew down there, and I was like, this is what I'm doing now. And just like really deeply fell in love with it. So I would say like Mexico's the place where I was really able to like grow and figure out just how to appreciate that so much. I would say I've always kind of had a love for the ocean, a love for the water. I used to have a really big fear of like fish or what was in the deep or what we didn't know. And I think that's pretty common for a lot of us. But it's been really cool to just see that not only just kind of disappear, but like this odd excitement where I've like now found myself jumping off of a sailboat into the depth of the ocean, hoping that there's an orca in there that I get to go swim with. So
Mm,
like
wow.
it's we are a completely different person and brain in that, and I love that. And I think it's just great to be reminded that, we can change and some fears are okay to get over and some maybe should stay there. But but that one's good to get over. So
Yeah, that's amazing. And I see that with that travel piece, another part of the many things that you're doing is also being a travel consultant. So I'm curious for someone that's new to travel, maybe they've never traveled before, maybe they're thinking of solo traveling. What do you think the best destinations for that would be?
oh wow. Yeah, it's funny. I like started offering like travel consultations because people would always be like, "Hey, I saw you went here. Like, what should I do?" And I'd be like answering questions and trying to give everybody like all my time. I was like 45 minutes later, I was like, I can't do this all day long or I'm gonna have no time to do what I need. So I was like, okay, we're gonna charge money, we're gonna book a call because that's valuing my time and I need to do that. And it also lets me value that person and really give
Mm-hmm.
them the attention that they deserve. So sidebar on that. But I would say like man, well, I think everybody should travel solo in their life at least once, if not once every few years. I think it changes you. It allows you to be with yourself, to, like take yourself to dinner, be okay being alone. You see the world differently. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
don't be scared of that. My advice would be if there is a country that's really on your heart and has always kind of pulled at you, and you're like, I just wonder what it's like there, go there. Like, if you're looking for like a specific place where you're like, this is really safe and it's a good, like maybe, as a female traveling alone or whatever, like, yeah, there's a tons of places that are like filled with backpackers. Yeah, I'm looking this way because I have a giant map on my wall, so I'm cheating
Mm.
looking at the world. But yeah, I mean, I'd say for sure, like Mexico is a great place to go. There's so many people there. I have a really deep love for the Middle East. I know that is one that a lot of people would probably steer away from, but I would say that I have not found better, more authentic, genuine people hospitality in those places. And so yes, there's different culture. We dress in a way to be respectful of that. There's things to adjust depending on what country you're in, but we should be doing that no matter where we are. Um, but yeah, I think there's plenty of places like, you can be alone sitting on you know, the coast of Sardinia in Italy and have a glass of wine alone and just reflect on, oh my gosh, what am I doing with my life? You could go skiing in Japan and be buried in snow and have an incredible experience and meet people. I think, it's so funny to me when people say, how do you meet people when you're traveling alone? I'm like, it's so much easier to meet people when you're traveling alone because you're one
Mm-hmm.
person and you can just say
Yeah.
hi. And there's not this like, well, what are you okay if I talk to this person? Or what if, can we invite them to join us for dinner? Like, there's no conferring. It's just like, hey, you seem like you want to have a coffee? You want to go, you want to jump on a boat? You want to go do this thing or have this experience? And it's just, there's so much more space to just go where, adventure takes you kind of at that moment.
I can relate as well because, yeah, I've done at this point a fair amount of traveling, and one thing I've noticed because people have told me as well that they assume that solo traveling it's hard to meet people and traveling with friends. I mean, it obviously has its benefits, and I've done both. And what I found is that traveling with friends, a lot of times I'm still kind of a budget traveler, staying at hostels, but I don't meet as many people because I'm just staying with them. Especially my last travel, I was with four friends, and it was or four in total, and it was amazing, but at one point we split and I was solo, and I met way more people solo in less time by a long shot than with those other people. So it's interesting, like you're saying, that
Yeah.
it really is easy. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
it's good
agree.
to
And
hear, good
yeah,
to know.
there's a wonderful like benefit and joy to both. Like I love traveling with friends, but I think both are great. And yeah, if you're listening and considering like taking a solo trip, like from both of us, go do it, please.
And on the I guess in a different approach to travel, because solo's amazing, but also you mentioned group trips, and I saw that on social media. I've seen different people on social media do it. It seems like a very interesting thing. Can I hear a little bit more about what that is
Yeah,
exactly?
sure, absolutely. I've been doing them for a while actually. And so I do two different kinds. I do some for creators specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, I also do, with coaching and mentoring. It kind of just allows me to hold space for everybody who's coming to like, um, I always joke, I'm like, I'm a terrible business person. Like, come on a trip. It costs less to come on a trip than to work with me for like that length of time. And you can ask as many
Yeah.
questions as you want, and I'm here to support you fully. But the the intent for me with the group trips with creators is to basically allow people to network with each other, to help people basically kind of build out that portfolio. I give them support when it comes to, how to pitch brands. If they want somebody to pitch alongside, I'll jump on it with them to help them with that. Um, but I plan everything for the whole trip. So they're basically, they have one booking and then it's done and they just show up. And all of our hotels, our activities, everything's included in there. So they're not worried or frustrated of like, well, what do we do next? You're not with a grouping like, where's everybody want to eat? It's like, what do we want to do? Should we do this thing? Oh, well, I don't want to spend that money. It's like, it's all done. You're not doing any of the logistics and you're able to really just be there and connect with like-minded people. I always have an application process for those so that I'm able to like be sure that it's a group that is going to be supportive, that's in a consistent space with each other, that they're going to be able to benefit and grow and learn from each other, push each other, and leave with great connections, with lifelong friends, but also with work that they can be proud of. They can bring brand work on. So those are really just a space for me to just kind of uh, just help our community. I really don't make a lot of money on those. I really just enjoy the time that I get to just bring people together in those, and they're really just an awesome time, and I've never regretted them. The next one I have is going to be in Bolivia in March. It's already full and whatever. I'll be introducing the team that's coming on that soon. But I have a great group of people. I'm super excited to share that country, and I always have friends that are local to that area, spend time so people get to just experience the country from a more authentic perspective. We're staying in hotels that are owned by people who live in that country so that economically we're giving our dollars back to the economy there, and instead of just dropping and leaving or funding something else from somewhere else. So it's really just something I'm really passionate about in that. And then I also host trips for anybody who's not a creator, or if they want creators want to come on them, but you don't have to be a photographer, you don't have to be a creative, you just are like, I want to travel, I want to travel with cool people, and I want to meet people and connect with those in a country. So those are just a little more open. They're a little bit different. Obviously, we're not getting up at sunrise to shoot for 2 hours. Maybe we're going to sleep in or do yoga or go surf or do something a little different, but we're going to still experience the country and the culture and really have a chance to connect with people that I know and call friends in that area. So that's those.
So yeah, that very cool. I saw. as well as the Bolivia when you're doing the a surf camp in Portugal. So that
Yep.
that's coming up, right? Is that
Yep. That
not
one's
the creator
open.
one, but just the anybody can join type of thing?
Yep, that one is for anybody. I'm excited for that. So it's a surf camp that's going to be in Algarve in Portugal. So yep, if you want to come learn to surf, there's incredible surf coaches there. It's a really beautiful spot. And of course, I will be there. I will have my camera there. I always shoot for everybody when we're on a trip, and I'm always happy to teach you, share, learn alongside you, whatever we can do. So yeah, that is one I'm excited for. That's coming up, and that just opened. So
That's awesome. Yeah. Anybody that's listening, go check it out. I've surfed in around Portugal and in the Algarve, so I can definitely attest that it's a great spot to be, a great spot to learn. So that sounds
yeah,
absolutely
it's
amazing.
beautiful. Thanks.
And just got a couple more questions. One
Yeah, sure.
is in terms of kind of looking onwards in terms of the future, is there certain kind of projects or travel or content that you're looking forward to in the next year or coming years, just with everything that's you're doing in your life?
Oh yeah, I'm always looking forward to stuff. Um, yeah, I would say that one of my bigger goals for the next couple years is to just be able to take my podcast, which is focused around being able to share human stories and just being able to make more of a series on that to kind of showcase more of the lives of the people that I get to sit down with. So I'm looking forward to bringing more of that to life. So I'm hoping to just find a little bit more space in my budget and my time to bring those to life because as we all know, passion projects usually require both of those a little bit more. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'd say in the next couple years, I'm really looking forward to bringing that to life a little bit more. And just yeah, just seeing where it goes and who I get to connect with and yeah, exciting upcoming projects even in the next month. So looking forward to a lot, excited for a lot, and really grateful to be in the space for sure.
Yeah, very cool with the podcast. I'm excited to um, tune in and see how that project evolves. And a final question I have that relates to that is with both the podcast and the travel and the storytelling, it seems that cultivating those human connections are a very important part of what you do. So I'm wondering, as someone that maybe struggles with cultivating human connections in their work life or personal life, what's one thing that they could kind of take away from all your involvement in that into their own lives to make it better?
I love that question.
Okay.
The simple answer is say hello. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
so I think if you put yourself in a position where you were, if say, if somebody walked up to you and was like, "Hi, what's your name? You seem really cool. I'd love to get to know you." We wouldn't, 90% of us, I like to believe, wouldn't look at that person and be like, "Ew, why are you talking to me?" We'd be
Hmm.
like, "Oh my gosh, somebody is interested and sees me." That means something to us. It touches us in a way that says, "I'm not invisible." It says, they're telling me that who I am matters. And so I'd say first and foremost that when you reach out to somebody, when you see somebody, when you want to talk to somebody, say hello, invite somebody if you're solo traveling to go to lunch with you or go on a little adventure with you. Um, Most people are going to feel really valued by being seen by somebody, being invited, being wanted. So you're not usually going to get a negative response. So I would say if I can encourage you to not be afraid to initiate hello, to not be afraid to initiate connecting with somebody. Um, I would say in addition to that, yeah, it can be scary. It can be like, what do I do? What should I say? How does this go? I think ultimately it's really easy just to listen, to say, "Hey, I'd love to know more about you. Like, what's something that you really enjoy?" We
Hmm.
don't have to say, "Hey, what do you do for work? Where are you from?" We can ask those questions, and they're great questions, and don't not ask them. But it's also great to ask a question that gives somebody space to share a bit of who they are. I really have, I've interviewed like 160 something people over the course of the podcast. And I have found that asking people questions that allow them to share something that matters to them, something that's impacted them, or an experience they've had is the best way to hear who they are. And then listen and
Hmm.
listen to absorb, to understand, not to just respond. Just listen to hear who they are. Don't be afraid to ask a follow-up. and don't be afraid to be honest and share if they ask you something in return. But I say, yeah, just be real, be yourself, and don't be afraid to say hello.
That's amazing advice. I feel like everyone that's tuning in or yeah, can really take away a lot from that, because for anybody, whatever era they're in, um, social interactions, human connections is obviously extremely important, and sometimes it can be a little scary to just go up to someone, but it's reassuring and great to hear you say that, so thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
and yeah, that was my last question. So, Lianna, it's been an absolutely amazing conversation. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And before we wrap up, where can the listeners find you online? What are your social handles? Because I know you got the podcast, the Instagram, the website, but where's the best place for people to
Yeah.
find you?
Yeah, sure. I just want to say thanks, Ezra, for taking the time.
Of
I
course.
really appreciate your intentionality with the questions that you've asked, and just your positive outlook on everything here has been wonderful. So thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate that.
Of course.
But
Thanks.
yeah, where you can find me, I would say I do have a website, I do have socials. Instagram's probably the easiest. My handle is at This World My View. The podcast is called Your Fellow Human. So you can find that anywhere you get podcasts. But those are, yeah, drop me a DM on Instagram, say hi, and yeah, I'm always around.
Amazing. Well, thanks again for joining us, Lianna. This has been amazing. And for everyone listening, make sure to check Lianna's social platforms, her website, podcast, everything. Tune into that. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to leave a review and send it to a friend. And we'll see you guys in the next episode.